The Madrid sun hung high in a cloudless sky, its golden rays bathing the upscale Salamanca district in a radiant glow. The Lamborghini Showroom stood as a beacon of luxury, its towering glass walls reflecting the city's wealth, its interior a shrine where supercars gleamed like artifacts under precision spotlights. Vinicius Jr, the 25-year-old Real Madrid superstar, stepped through the automatic doors, his presence quiet yet magnetic. Dressed in a black hoodie, faded jeans, and a baseball cap pulled low, he looked more like a local student than a global icon whose electrifying dribbles and samba celebrations had set the Santiago Bernabeu ablaze. Today, Vinicius wasn't chasing goals or dodging defenders. She was here to fulfill a childhood dream, buying a Lamborghini, a symbol of his extraordinary journey from the favelas of São Gonçalo to football's pinnacle. But what awaited him was a confrontation that would test his resilience, ignite a global firestorm, and remind the world why he's more than a star, he's a beacon of heart and defiance. Before we dive into this incredible tale, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. If you love inspiring stories like this, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, because tomorrow we've got another heart-pounding story waiting for you. Vinicius paused just inside the showroom, his eyes sweeping over the automotive masterpieces, a vibrant yellow Aventador with scissor doors like an eagle's wings, a matte black Huracan crouched like a predator, a silver Urus radiating futuristic power. Each car stirred vivid memories of his childhood in São Gonçalo, where he'd sit cross-legged on a cracked concrete floor, gazing at Lamborghini posters taped to peeling walls, their bold lines fueling dreams of a life beyond the dusty pitches and grinding poverty. As a boy, he'd trace the curves of an Aventador with his finger, whispering to himself, "One day, Vini, one day." Now, with a Champions League title, a Ballon d'Or nomination, and a multi-million-dollar contract, that day had arrived. He adjusted his cap, his fingers brushing the embroidered Brazilian flag, a quiet tribute to his roots and his late grandmother, who'd believed in his dreams when few others did. He wasn't here to flaunt his wealth or demand attention. He wanted to savor the moment, maybe take a test drive to feel the roar of a 12-engine pulse through his soul. At the reception desk stood Carlos Martinez, a 45-year-old salesman with a starched suit, slicked-back hair, and a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. Carlos prided himself on his ability to read customers, separating wealthy buyers from time wasters with a single glance. His eyes landed on Vinicius, and his smile faltered, replaced by a flicker of disdain. To Carlos, this young man in casual clothes, with dark skin and a relaxed posture, didn't belong among million-euro cars. His snap judgment, steeped in prejudice he'd never examined, was one he'd made countless times, assuming it kept the showroom exclusive. "Can I help you?" Carlos asked, his tone sharp, his gaze raking over Vinicius's hoodie and jeans with barely concealed contempt. Vinicius smiled politely, his voice warm with a soft Brazilian accent. "Yeah, I'm interested in the Aventador," he said, nodding toward the yellow beast across the showroom. "Can you tell me about its specs? Maybe set up a test drive?" Carlos raised an eyebrow, his lips curling into a condescending smirk. "The Aventador?" he repeated, his voice dripping with skepticism. "That's a serious machine, my friend. Starts at €500,000, base model. You sure you're in the right place?" A few nearby customers, a businessman in a tailored suit flipping through a brochure, a young couple admiring a Huracan, a group of tourists snapping photos of a Urus glanced over, sensing the brewing tension. A teenage girl, filming a TikTok of the showroom's cars, subtly tilted her phone toward the exchange, her live stream already buzzing with curious viewers. Vinicius's smile didn't waver, his composure unshaken. "I'm in the right place," he said calmly, his hands resting loosely in his pockets. I'd like to know more about the Carangine, performance, customization options. Carlos let out a short, humorless laugh, loud enough to draw more eyes. Look, kid, he said, crossing his arms, his tone patronizing. These aren't toys you can just poke around. They're for serious buyers. Why don't you check out something more realistic down the street? Maybe a used hatchback? The racist undertone was unmistakable, his words slicing through the air like a whip. The businessman paused, his brow furrowing, setting down his brochure. The couple exchanged uneasy glances, the woman whispering, "That's not okay." The tourists murmured among themselves, one pulling out a phone to record. The girl's live stream surged, comments flooding in, "This guy's so rude. Who's he talking to?" Vinicius remained calm, his eyes meeting Carlos's with quiet intensity. "I'm here for the Aventador," he repeated, his voice steady but firm. "Can you help me with that? Or should I talk to someone else?" Carlos's smirk widened, emboldened by the attention and his own arrogance. "Talk to someone else," he scoffed, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a mocking whisper. "Listen, amigo, this isn't a charity tour. You can't just stroll in off the street, ask questions, and expect a joyride. Real buyers don't look like they're heading to a skate park." The insult landed hard, the showroom growing quieter as heads turned. The girl's live stream hit 5-0 viewers, her camera zooming in as comments raged. "This is messed up. Why is he acting like that?" The businessman stepped closer, his voice firm. "That's enough," he said to Carlos. "He's just asking about a car. Do your job." Carlos turned, his face flushing with irritation. "Stay out of this, sir," he snapped, his voice rising. "I'm handling it. This kid's wasting my time." The racist implication was clear, and the crowd reacted a gasp from the couple, a murmur from the tourists, a young man in a Barcelona jersey shaking his head in disgust. The girl's livestream comments exploded. "Call him out! This salesman's done." Vinicius sighed softly, adjusting his cap with a subtle flick, his backpack slung over one shoulder. "I'm a customer," he said, pulling out his phone. "I can show you my bank details, my ID. Whatever you need to know, I'm serious." Carlos waved a hand dismissively, his voice booming with authority. "Save it, kid. I've seen your type coming in, acting curious, snapping selfies, wasting everyone's time. You're not fooling me." He gestured toward the door, his tone final. "Why don't you leave before I call security?" The threat electrified the air, the showroom now a stage for a public showdown. The girl's live stream surged past 10-0 viewers, her voice audible. "This guy's way out of line." The couple stepped forward, the woman speaking up. "You're making a mistake," she said firmly. "Let him talk." The tourists began filming, their whispers turning to outrage. The businessman shook his head, muttering, "Unbelievable." A middle-aged woman near the Urus, clutching a designer handbag, added her voice. "This is disgraceful. Treat him with respect." Carlos, undeterred, grabbed his radio with a flourish. "Security, we've got a situation at the front desk," he said, his voice dripping with smugness. "Some kid's causing trouble." The crowd buzzed louder, phones raised, the atmosphere crackling with tension. The girl's live stream hit 20-0 viewers, comments raging. "This salesman's gonna regret this. Who's the guy he's talking to?" Vinicius stood his ground, his posture relaxed, his hands back in his pockets. He could have ended the confrontation in seconds, flashed his Real Madrid ID, shown his Instagram with 50 million followers, or dropped his name to silence Carlos, but he didn't. He chose silence, letting the situation unfold, his calmness a stark contrast to Carlos's escalating aggression. Deep down, Vinicius felt the familiar sting of prejudice, the same bite he'd faced in stadiums, where fans hurled slurs, or in media where his samba celebrations were labeled provocative. But he learned long ago that his strength lay not in anger, but in resilience, and letting his actions speak louder than hate. As he stood there, he thought of his mother's words. Philo, let your heart shine, no matter what they throw at you. Minutes later, 2 security guards arrived, their steps heavy on the polished marble floor. The older guard, Miguel, carried an air of authority, his face stern but professional. The younger one, Javier, scanned the scene with sharp eyes, his posture alert. "What's the problem?" Miguel asked, his tone even but firm. Carlos pointed at Vinicius, his voice thick with irritation. "This kid's wasting my time, asking about cars he can't afford, demanding test drives. He's got to go." Javier's gaze lingered on Vinicius, who met his eyes with that same quiet intensity. Something about the young man's presences, calm, his poise, the way he carried himself familiar, like a spark of recognition Javier couldn't quite place. "Sir," Javier said to Vinicius, his voice softer than Miguel's, "can you show some ID, please?" Vinicius nodded, reaching into his backpack with deliberate calm. He pulled out his passport and handed it to Javier, his expression unruffled, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Javier opened it, his eyes scanning the details. Suddenly, his face shifted, his breath caught, his eyes widened, and he leaned toward Miguel, whispering urgently, "This is Vinicius Jr." Miguel's stern expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of disbelief. "Who?" Javier's tone grew firmer, his voice low but insistent. "Vinicius Jr., the Real Madrid player. You know, the guy who won the Champions League? The one tearing up La Liga?" Carlos froze, his smirk vanishing like smoke, his face draining of color. "No way," he muttered, snatching the passport from Javier's hands. He stared at the name, Vinicius José Paizón de Oliveira Junioras. If it were a riddle he couldn't solve. His hands trembled, his breath shallow, the weight of his mistake crashing down like a tidal wave. This can't be him," he stammered, his voice barely audible. Vinicius remained silent, watching the exchange with a calm that unnerved Carlos further. The crowd was electric now, some overhearing Javier's whisper, others catching the shift in Carlos's demeanor. The teenage girl's live stream exploded, hitting 50, 0 viewers, comments flooding in. "Is that Vinny Jr.? This salesman's finished." The businessman smiled faintly, sensing justice. The couple clapped softly, the husband muttering, "Told you." The tourists' cameras rolled, their excitement palpable. The middle-aged woman by the Urus nodded approvingly, whispering to her friend, "That's class right there." Carlos handed the passport back, his hands shaking visibly. "Look, man," he said, his voice cracking, "I didn't know who you were. Honest mistake. Let's start over, okay? You want the Aventador? I can get you the keys right now." But Vinicius didn't move. He looked at Carlos, his eyes steady but piercing, cutting through the salesman's panic like a blade. "You didn't need to know who I am," he said, his voice low but resonant, carrying the weight of years spent fighting prejudice. "You should have treated me like a person, like you treat everyone who walks through that door." The words landed like a thunderclap, silencing the showroom. Phones remained raised, capturing the moment, but the air was thick with awe. The businessman nodded, his eyes glistening with respect. The couple exchanged approving glances, the wife whispering, "He's so right." The tourists murmured in agreement, one snapping a photo of Vinicius standing tall. The girl's live stream surged past 100. 0 viewers, comments raging, "Vini's a king!" "That was legendary." The middle-aged woman by the Urus wiped a tear, moved by Vinicius's dignity. Carlos opened his mouth, but no words came. He looked around, seeing the disapproving stares, the cameras, the weight of his actions bearing down like a storm. I I'm sorry, he stammered, his voice barely audible, his face flushed with shame. I didn't mean... I was just doing my job. Vinicius shook his head slightly, his expression unwavering. Your job isn't to judge people by how they look, he said, his tone firm but not cruel. Your job is to help customers. Like me. Like anyone. Carlos swallowed hard, his arrogance shattered, replaced by a raw mix of shame and panic. Javier stepped forward, his tone professional but authoritative. Sir, please come with me, he said to Vinicius. We'll get you set up with the Aventador, no problem. Vinicius nodded, adjusting his cap with a subtle flick, his backpack still slung over one shoulder. As he walked toward the yellow Aventador, he didn't gloat or glance back at Carlos. He moved forward, his head held high, his dignity unbroken. The crowd parted for him, some whispering in awe, others clapping softly. A young boy in a Real Madrid jersey, standing with his father near the Huracan, shouted, Vini, you're the best! Vinicius turned, flashing a warm smile and a thumbs up, his warmth lighting up the room. The teenage girl followed, her live stream still rolling, now flooded with 200 viewers. Comments poured in. Vini's a legend. This salesman's gonna regret this forever. Inside the private consultation room, a senior manager named Elena rushed in, her face a mix of apology and admiration. Mr. Vinicius, I'm deeply sorry for what happened, she said, her voice sincere. This is unacceptable. Please, let us make this right. The Aventador any customization, any terms, it's yours. Vinicius smiled, his warmth genuine, his eyes softening. I just want the car, he said. And a test drive, if that's okay. Elena nodded eagerly, handing him the keys with a respectful bow. Of course, take as long as you like. Outside, Carlos stood frozen, his radio silent in his hand, his face a mask of shock. Javier and Miguel exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of pity and frustration. You messed up, Carlos, Javier said quietly, his voice tinged with disappointment. That's Vinicius Jr. The guy's a global star. Carlos ran a hand over his face, his voice hoarse. I didn't know, he muttered, staring at the floor. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. Miguel shook his head, his tone blunt. That's why he's different. He didn't need to tell you who he is. You should have just done your job. The teenage girl's live stream had gone viral. Clips of Carlos's insults, Vinicius's poised response, and the reveal of his identity spreading across social media like wildfire. Hashtags like Respect Vini, No to Prejudice, and Vini Jr. trended globally within hours. Fans flooded the comments with praise for Vinicius's composure and outrage at Carlos's behavior. This is why Vini's my hero, one tweet read, shared with a clip of his response. He didn't shout. His silence spoke louder than anything. Another post with a montage of his goals, captioned, Vinicius Jr. just taught the world a lesson in dignity. Celebrities, from Brazilian musicians to NBA stars, chimed in, amplifying the story. Neymar Jr. posted a fire emoji with the words, Vini, você é rei. Vinicius took the Aventador for a test drive, the V12 engine roaring through Madrid's streets, its yellow paint gleaming under the city's golden lights. The car's power surged through him, a visceral connection to the dreams of a boy in São Gonçalo who'd once believed such a moment was impossible. As he navigated the city, passing the iconic Plaza Mayor, he reflected on the confrontation. The sting of prejudice was familiar on the pitch, where fans hurled slurs, in media, where his joy was labeled arrogant, in life, where his skin marked him as other. Each time, it cut deep, but he refused to let it define him. He channeled it into his game, his samba, his defiance. He thought of his family, his mother's sacrifices, his brother's laughter, and the kids in Brazil who saw him as proof that dreams could soar. He parked the car back at the showroom, stepping out with a quiet smile. "I'll take it," he told Elena, who beamed with relief and gratitude. In the private office, as Vinicius signed the paperwork, Elena offered complimentary customizations, a bespoke leather interior, his initials embossed on the seats, a custom paint job as an apology. A young employee, Diego, a Real Madrid fan with stars in his eyes, peeked in nervously. "Mr. Vinicius," he said shyly, clutching a phone. "Can I get a selfie? You're my idol." Vinicius laughed, his warmth lighting up the room. "Sure, man," he said, posing for the photo, clapping Diego on the shoulder. "Thanks for the support. Keep dreaming big." Diego grinned, posting the selfie to Instagram with the caption, "Met the GOAT today. Pure class." The post went viral, racking up thousands of likes within minutes. Meanwhile, Carlos sat in the manager's office, his supervisor, Anna, pacing furiously. "Do you realize what you've done?" she snapped, slamming a tablet onto the desk. The screen displayed the viral video, its view count soaring past 2 million. That was Vinicius Jr. The Vinicius Jr. And you humiliated him in front of a crowd. Carlos stared at the floor, his hands clasped tightly, his knuckles white. "I didn't know," he whispered, his voice cracking. "He didn't look like a star." Anna's eyes narrowed, her voice icy. "That's not the point. You judged him because of his clothes, his skin, his age, and now it's all over the internet. The dealership's reputation is in tatters, and you're the face of this disaster." Carlos's face crumpled, panic setting in. "You can't fire me," he pleaded. "I've been here 8 years." Anna's voice was final. "And in 8 years, you should have learned to treat people with respect. You're suspended pending a full investigation, and I wouldn't count on keeping your job." Carlos slumped in his chair, the weight of his actions overwhelming him. Outside, the world was reacting with a fury he couldn't have imagined. The viral video had reached tens of millions, sparking global debates about racism, respect, and resilience. Fans of Vinicius flooded social media with messages of support, sharing clips of his goals, his iconic samba celebrations, his journey from Brazil's favelas to Madrid's glory. "This is why Vini's special," one Instagram post read, accompanied by a montage of his dribbles. He didn't need to shout his name. His heart spoke louder. The next day, the story dominated headlines across Spain, Brazil, and beyond. News outlets ran features with titles like "Vinicius Jr. Humiliated at Lamborghini Showroom," "Responds with Class," and "Real Madrid Stars Dignity Shines Against Prejudice." Pundits on sports shows praised Vinicius's composure, while social commentators dissected the incident as a stark reminder of systemic bias. The dealership issued a public apology on X, promising a thorough review of their policies, mandatory diversity training for staff, and a donation to a local youth football program in Vinicius's name. They also invited Vinicius to a private event to unveil his customized Aventador, an attempt to rebuild trust. Carlos's suspension became permanent, his name synonymous with the incident, his career in ruins. Vinicius, true to his spirit, spoke out in a post-match interview after scoring a stunning goal against Atletico Madrid, his samba celebration igniting the Bernabeu. The crowd chanted his name, their banners reading, "Vini, Heart of Brazil." "I don't hold hate in my heart," he said, his voice steady, his eyes bright with conviction. "What happened at the dealership wasn't right, but I hope that man learns from it. We all deserve respect, no matter who we are, where we're from, or what we wear." The words resonated globally, shared by millions across platforms. Fans hailed Vinicius not just as a star, but as a beacon of hope in a divided world. His teammates, including Kylian Mbappe and Rodrigo, posted messages of support, with Mbappe writing, "Vini, you're an inspiration. Keep shining." Weeks later, the impact lingered. In São Gonçalo, a community center launched a Vini Jr. scholarship for young footballers, inspired by his story. In Madrid, fans painted murals of Vinicius outside the Bernabeu, his silhouette dancing with a ball, the words "Respect Vini" emblazoned below. The dealership, under Elena's leadership, implemented sweeping changes, earning praise for their accountability. They hosted a youth football clinic, inviting Vinicius to speak, where he shared his journey with wide-eyed kids, telling them, "Your dreams are bigger than anyone's doubts." The event went viral, further cementing his legacy. Carlos, meanwhile, began volunteering at a youth soccer clinic in a working-class Madrid neighborhood, his face etched with regret. One evening, a boy in a Vinicius Jr. jersey ran up holding a worn football. "You like Vini?" the boy asked, his eyes wide. Carlos nodded, a faint smile breaking through his somber expression. "Yeah," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. He's a great guy, a real fighter." Carlos's journey to redemption was slow, but he was learning, step by painful step, the lesson Vinicius had taught him. Respect is owed to all, not earned by appearance. Vinicius's story became more than a viral momentite, was a lesson etched in hearts worldwide. True greatness isn't about shouting your name, but about carrying yourself with dignity, even when others try to tear you down. Vinicius Jr. didn't just walk into that Lamborghini showroom. He walked through a storm, drove out in triumph, and left behind a legacy of heart that will echo for generations. So, dear viewers, what did you think of this story? Would you have stood up for Vinicius like the crowd did? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, and let's spread the message of respect, love, and unity together.